Most of us are all too familiar with some of the atrocities and crimes against humanity that take place across the globe each day. While many of these issues go largely unnoticed by our Western culture, some filmmakers have taken the time to shed light on these happenings by making documentary films to detail these events, with many of these films being available on Netflix right now. Number 5. The film titled Jesus Camp was released in September of 2006 and follows filmmakers Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady as they explore Kids on Fire, an evangelical Christian summer camp. Reverend Becky Fisher led the camp, which ultimately got shut down a few months after the film's release. At what can be referred to as Jesus Camp, children were led by a team of spiritual leaders in their community. The children were taught Bible lessons and even did some very fun usual camp activities, such as swimming and learning to start a campfire. The other side of the camp's agenda was strengthening and intensifying each child's commitment to God and their religion. When the film was released, it gained positive feedback as a compelling story shared through a unique-looking glass. However, there was backlash from the audience, and a fair amount of debate concerning the camp's content. It box-officed over $1 million during its time in select theaters, which is pretty impressive for an amateur film. While most fans took the content of the church to be a little too extreme and disturbing, citing the camp runners for brainwashing the kids, others think it's a beautiful example of how powerful faith can be, and admired the children and camp runners for their devotion to God. As for the latter, these viewers also think that the film shed a negative light on an otherwise positive documentary. In November of 2006, 2 months after the film's release, the church was shut down indefinitely following an investigation of the church's procedures. Some notable moments from the documentary that make this ride truly wild involve scenes where children speak in tongues and uncontrollably sob from the alleged power of God. Groups of kids wearing combat costumes while shouting and praying, and a team of camp runners screaming at children to demand obedience. Several times throughout the camp stay, children are asked if they were willing to sacrifice their lives for God and were forced to pray that God put an end to abortion. Number 4. Madeleine McCann was your average happy 3-year-old when she mysteriously vanished. McCann and her family were staying at a holiday apartment in Portugal. The McCann family was enjoying their vacation with numerous other family members. On the night of her disappearance on May 3, 2007, the children were all put to bed in the apartment while the adults went out for dinner and drinks at a restaurant located on the resort's property just 100 feet from the sleeping kids. Several times throughout the relaxing evening, the parents went to quietly check on their kids, and around 11 p.m., Madeleine's mother returned for a check-in and found that the daughter was missing. She frantically alerted her family and the employees working at the resort. The entire location became home to a search party that unfortunately never located the girl. At first, DNA found in the apartment room led investigators to believe that an accident may have occurred and that the missing girl's parents were trying to cover it up. Madeleine's parents were labeled suspects in Portugal. A lack of evidence, though, forced detectives to archive the case. This let her parents off the hook, but it also meant chances of finding her were nearly impossible. Her parents did, however, hire private investigators to keep the search ongoing. The girl has still not been found, but an 8-part documentary was released on Netflix in March of 2019. The film not only recounts the present facts of the case from 2007, but it explores all that's been found and learned since then. It also takes a look at the media side of the story because in the early stages, Madeleine's case was considered the most heavily covered missing persons case in modern history. Number 3. This documentary from 1988, titled The Thin Blue Line, follows the story of Randall Dale Adams, a man serving time in prison for a crime he was wrongly accused of. Adams was traveling with his brother to California. On Thanksgiving Day, they made a stop in Dallas and stayed the night because Adams had been offered a contract job the next day. He went to the job, but no one showed up, so he began his route back to his brother, but unfortunately his car ran out of gas on the way. 16-year-old David Ray Harris had just stolen his neighbor's car and was traveling with a shotgun and pistol. He saw Adams standing along the roadside and offered him a ride. The two became friends and spent most of their day together drinking, smoking, and watching movies at a drive-in. Robert Wood was a Dallas police officer working patrol late that same night. Wood noticed the plates of the stolen car and pulled the two over. As soon as he approached the car, the window slowly rolled down and he was shot twice. The car sped off and his partner Teresa tried to fire at the suspects but failed. Harris was later apprehended because he'd boasted to his friends back home, claiming he was responsible for the crime. However, upon interrogation, Harris pointed to Adams as the guilty partner. Adams insisted that he'd been dropped off by Harris before the crime even occurred. Evidence, eyewitness accounts, and alibis all proved that Adams was innocent. Each piece of evidence pointed directly at Harris. The judge later admitted that he sentenced Adams to death because the true suspect was a minor. The documentary, titled Thin Blue Line, recounted all of the evidence and details of the case, provided reenactment scenarios, and conducted interviews with numerous professionals and experts in both law, CSI, and psychology. Popular filmmaker Michael Moore put his best work into the 2002 documentary Bowling for Columbine. Moore takes the viewer on a journey of exploration into the Columbine shooting that occurred in 1999 and the events leading up to that tragic day in American history. Moore interviews professionals, friends of the victims, and more to provide a thorough and compelling look at the notorious crime. However, he takes things a step further by paying special attention to a beaming issue, seen by many involved in most mass shootings: American gun laws. While the topic is still controversial, many believe that America has always needed some kind of gun control to help cut back on the amount of mass shootings that occur. Of course, this aspect of the documentary can be upsetting for those that believe American gun rights and the Second Amendment are an important foundation for the country and freedom in general. The online description for this documentary gives the viewer an idea of what controversial yet passionate actions are covered by Moore, who wrote, directed, produced, and narrated the film. It reads, political documentary filmmaker Michael Moore explores the circumstances that lead to the 1999 Columbine High School massacre, and more broadly, the proliferation of guns and a high homicide rate in America. In his trademark provocative fashion, Moore accosts Kmart corporate employees and pleads with them to stop selling bullets, and investigates why Canada doesn't have the same excessive rate of gun violence, and questions actor Charlton Heston on his support for the National Rifle Association. The film received numerous awards in many categories and is widely considered the best documentary of all time, even by those that don't agree with its specific political stance. Number 1. This 4-part Netflix documentary titled When They See Us was released in May of 2019. The film was created, co-written, and directed by Ava DuVernay and covers the notorious case of the Central Park Five. This nickname was given to the 1989 case in which 5 male suspects were prosecuted on charges related to the sexual assault of a woman in New York. The 5 young men of color were accused of heinous crimes. Although evidence, witness reports, and other details did not support the guilt of the young men, each of them were found guilty for a variety of charges related to the crime. In 2002, after the teens had grown into men, the true suspect was found. He turned himself in and confessed his crime. The judge on the Central Park Five case had the young men exonerated. However, the case has long stood as an example of racism and prejudice flaws in the American justice system. The 2019 documentary presents the facts of the case as they were in 1989 and shines a modern light on the case overall. It also focuses heavily on the concept of racism causing unfair disadvantages for suspects of color. Critically, the film has been met with approval and given high scores for its production and cast. However, others see it as propaganda that tries to label all parties involved as racist and weakens the public's belief in the justice system. Thankfully, no matter what your opinion is, it's a well-produced film that many can enjoy. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.